Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Create and Consume, a podcast about what we make, watch, and buy in the era of digital content. I'm your host, Austen Tosone. If I could sit down with my 20-year-old self, oh my God, there is literally so much that I would want to say. There are things that I feel like I had to learn the hard way, stuff that would have saved me time, stress, and a lot of second guessing. And your 20s are this weird mix of being excited and also having no idea what's going on. You're trying to figure out who you are, what you want, and how to actually make it all happen. So today I wanted to share the advice that I wish I had known back then. So I'll talk through some things related to career, confidence, and also what really matters at the end of the day. Before we get into today's topic, let's do a little create and consume. And as a reminder, you can tell me what you are creating and consuming anywhere that I am reachable on the internet. So you can leave a comment on Spotify, you can leave a comment if you're watching this episode on YouTube. Follow along with us at Create and Consume Pod on Instagram and TikTok and leave your thoughts there as well, mostly because I'm nosy. I like to know what else we're watching. I need to know who else is watching White Lotus with me and what the heck that Sunday episode was from this past week. But that's not what I'm going to talk to you about today. So, in terms of what I personally have been creating this week, I just published my big biannual beauty declutter and clear out video. This is a process that I have really honed over the last few years. And I guess it's kind of specific to being a beauty content creator and my job. But essentially, what I do is go through all of the products that I currently have in my makeup vanity and in the bathroom. And I make sure that I'm actually using everything that's in there. Typically, I go through what I already have and I keep an eye out for anything that is empty or expired or just not being reached for. And I remove those items to make room for new in products that I receive from brands so I can ensure I'm actually testing everything I'm being sent. And I put anything that I'm not personally able to use into a giveaway bin, which then friends and family are able to look through and pull from. And as far as what I consumed in this past week, I was watching Colin and Samir's YouTube channel. They do really fantastic interviews with creators, brand founders, big tech CEOs, and this past week they had Jack Conti on their episode, who is the CEO and founder of Patreon. I actually used to have a Patreon. I had a Patreon for almost 2.5 years, and I ultimately decided to close my Patreon in April of last year. If you want to hear more about that decision, I actually did a whole YouTube video about why I decided to close my Patreon. And even though I'm no longer actively on Patreon creating content there, I do think it is a really incredible platform for creators. And when done correctly and when you find your groove on there, it can be a great place to build community, make additional income, and give exclusive content to your most loyal fans and subscribers. So, do love Patreon overall for that. And I like the platform even more now after listening to this conversation. So, Jack and Colin and Samir talked all about long-term success as a content creator, breakthrough moments, monetization, and so much more. I actually featured this episode in my recent Operation 100K update, which is a series I'm doing over on my short form platforms, talking about how I am hoping to reach 100,000 YouTube subscribers by the end of the year and exactly what I'm doing to get to that milestone. So I will leave a link to that down below if you want to check it out over on Instagram or TikTok. But also, I'm going to link the full interview on Colin and Samir's YouTube channel with Jack Conti as well, because if you are a content creator of any kind, I really think it's worth a listen. And I will also add, this is probably one of the first really long videos. Be warned, the conversation is an hour plus, I believe, that I was able to watch now that I have signed up for YouTube Premium. My life, I think, has changed for the better. I am so happy that I finally caved and did YouTube Premium, because I got 2 months free, which we love, but YouTube really is that platform that I watch basically every single day. Netflix, maybe I'm watching one show or the other, rotating through the subscriptions. But when it comes to YouTube, that is actually the one that I tune into every single day. So YouTube Premium is going very well for me so far. I found the conversation really insightful, lots of great takeaways there. So, like I said, I will link that in the show notes if you want to check it out. I think one big part of this growth journey towards 100,000 subscribers is also really listening to the creators who have sort of done it already and getting more information from people who are just as inundated in this industry as I am, so that I can take in lots of different opinions and thoughts and kind of synthesize that information and apply it to myself and my channel and my brand. and use it to my advantage to hopefully continue to grow. With that all being said, let's get into the topic for today's conversation, which is advice for my 20-year-old self. And this kind of stemmed from two different things. Number one, there is a TikTok trend that I guess it's probably died off by now, but there was a TikTok trend in the last few weeks that was basically like, I got coffee with my younger self, dot, dot, dot. And I didn't really love the format of this trend. I loved the concept, but I didn't like how it was just basically a huge block of text overlaid with a video and kind of the same sound. And I felt like people had really insightful things to say about what they would say if they did get coffee with their younger selves, but I just didn't find the format that engaging. And by the time I had seen like three of them, I would just start scrolling past them. But that being said, I loved the idea of kind of doing like a I got coffee with my younger self, and here's what I would have told her, or here's how she showed up, or here's how I was compared to how I am now, especially given that I just turned 30 this year. And I've been wanting to do some kind of like letter to myself in my early 20s or advice episodes. So that's one thing that kind of sparked my recent interest in getting this episode queued up right now. And then another thing that kind of re-inspired this was that I am signed up as a mentor for the college that I went to, which is Barnard in the city. And I have recently done, like a recent coffee chat and an email exchange with current students who are able to like search me on the mentor portal and ask me for advice. And both of them are interested in editorial slash publishing slash like social media at large. So I recently have had these two different conversations with these students, and it's definitely dusted off some old cobwebs, if you know what I mean. Like, there are a lot of things that they've asked about that I've gone back and thought, when I was in their position, like when I was a senior in college, here is how I would have approached this, or here's where I thought I was headed compared to where I am now. And I feel like being able to share that, especially if you are listening to this and you are younger than me, or you feel like you are in need of just a little, I don't know, I guess I'll call it big sister advice. I always feel strange saying that because I'm an only child, and in my head, I don't have any siblings, but maybe it is a little bit of a big sister advice moment. That's what inspired today's episode. Grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or whatever your favorite beverage of the moment is, and let's talk about some advice I'd give myself 10 years ago. The first thing I would say is to always, always, always start before you're ready. And I think I was pretty good about doing this in my early 20s, but I think I mean to even more so lean into all of the things that in my head I wanted to do, but I wasn't always totally sure what the execution would actually look like. I feel like the biggest thing that comes to mind when I see start before you're ready would be to go back and tell myself to start my YouTube channel earlier. And I actually did try to start my YouTube channel in college, but I went back and privated the videos because originally I did a couple of videos where I talked about my job interning at Cosmopolitan, or not my job, my unpaid internship at Cosmopolitan. And the videos were blurry. They were shot like in my Barnard dorm room. They were not very well lit, or they just didn't look good. And on top of all of that, I couldn't really actually say much about my internship. I would be like, we had a shoot. I can't tell you what it's for, but we did that today. They just weren't really the best pieces of content, which no kidding, they weren't, because I had never done that before. There was something in the back of my head that I wish I had just said, just keep going. Like, even if you make videos that no one watches, even if you edit some and don't post, like, just keep going at that pace. Because if I had actually continued on from 2015, I would have had a 2-year jump on myself when I did actually start my channel in 2017. And I always think about like, oh, I wonder where I would have been had I just started earlier. And even again with things like TikTok, obviously I joined TikTok in 2019, and I feel like I leaned in as much as I could, given that I also had a full-time job when I first got on TikTok, but really just continuing to be an early adopter of things, lean in, try as much as I can with like newer platforms and really just put my all into them. I do think that there's a lot to be said for that. And I continue to try to be an early adopter of maybe not always new platforms, but even new features like, 3-minute reels and shorts now that we have them, and adding captions and transitions and things that have come up over the years. On a similar note, I would tell myself that if you have a hunch, follow it. And I guess these first couple, I am thinking more in terms of my business and how I could kind of jump on early trends, and how I would encourage myself to continue to be a little bit more curious, because even though I'd always said in the beginning that my blog and social media and all of that stuff was a side hustle. I think I could have put a little bit more of like the business mentality behind it, especially given what I wouldn't have known back when I was 20, but what happens to me in the next few years, which is that I would get laid off twice from two different publications, just to really invest in like the business of my blog and know that that was something I could really fall back on, I think is important. And I think also sometimes these hunches lead you down paths that aren't necessarily right for you, but that encourages you to learn a lesson and learn it faster than you would have had you not taken a chance on something. So, for example, when I first had the opportunity to intern in New York City, I had grown up watching Project Runway and I had just read, books and books of like Chanel and Marc Jacobs and all these people. And my first instinct was, I really want to intern with a fashion designer. And my summer spent interning with a fashion designer very much proved to me that I did not want to be a fashion designer because it's so hard, you guys. That is an underratedly hard job, I think, because you have to stay current, but you want to also look ahead, but you don't want to look too far ahead because you don't want to be out of a trend cycle, and you want to buy expensive fabrics so that your pieces are quality, but it can't be too expensive because then your costs go up and your margins are terrible. And it's really, really hard to be a designer. So that is something that, because I got to experience and see it firsthand, I learned really quickly. I could have, if I didn't do that internship between my freshman and sophomore year of college, I could have gotten all the way to my senior year and still thought maybe I want to be a designer, only to realize, that is a really hard job. Not that working in editorial and social media aren't also competitive careers, but it was really intense and a lot to see the firsthand experience of what it was like to work with a fashion designer. And I think having a hunch and following it can really pay off in the sense that you just get to explore more, gather more information, and then look back and really see what your options actually are. Another piece of advice that I think I definitely needed to hear in my early 20s was your job will evolve and it also shouldn't be your identity. And I guess this one is kind of to be taken in two parts. But when I was 20, I knew how badly I wanted to work at a magazine. I also knew I loved my blog and social media. But at the time, just given my audience size and my previous, internship experience, and the reason I moved to New York to be closer to communications and all these different things, I still wanted to pursue a traditional job path because at the time, there weren't really a lot of people of my peers, at least, who were graduating from Barnard and being like, I think I'm just going to hang out for a year and post on Instagram. I mean, no one really was saying that. It was definitely on my radar to get a job and to at least try having a bit more of a traditional and corporate career before I would ever pursue freelancing, unless I straight up didn't get a job and didn't have a choice otherwise. But I remember always wanting to work. Even when I was younger, I would go and do lemonade stands. I would decorate people's backpacks at school and charge them $3 a backpack. I would knit scarves and try to sell them. I would make greeting cards and try to get my parents to buy them for $1. I'm pretty sure at one point I even went to the local bagel store and asked if they were hiring. And it wasn't even like I wanted to work at the bagel store. I kind of just wanted to know what it was like to have a job. And so the entire time that I was in college, I feel like I just kept looking forward to oh, I can't wait till I could start working. And I was obviously interning a lot. I would have definitely told myself to enjoy college a little bit more. And I think by my second semester senior year, I really leaned in and was able to enjoy the college experience a lot more. But I think I would also say, again, that your job is going to evolve in ways you can't always predict. And that would have been really hard for me to hear back then because, as far as I knew, with magazines, there was one path, and that was to basically start at the bottom of the masthead and then work your way up the masthead. And by that, I mean you enter a publication as the editorial assistant, which I did, and you get promoted to assistant editor, which I did. And then I never made it past that because I kept getting laid off. But eventually, in theory, you would work your way up to associate and then senior and then maybe a department head or the editor in chief. And I think I went in with quite a naive spirit and energy. If I were talking to my 20-year-old self right now, though, I would tell her to stay open to pivots. I would tell her to have a backup plan and have some money saved, which I certainly did not at the time, the first time that I got laid off from Nylon, and to trust myself the most out of anyone. I think I placed a lot of trust in the companies that hired me when I was younger. And I think that can be a slippery slope, especially if you ultimately get laid off like I do. One of the big reasons I wanted to be a magazine editor in the first place was because I thought everyone really respected one another and valued one another, and that it was kind of like a family in some ways. And in 90% of cases, that's not really the case. Anyway, I was always really interested in work. I always understood the value of hard work, but again, there is so much more to life than work. And I really don't think that was on my radar when I was 20 and was just about to start the job search and hoping to work my way up at magazines. And I don't even know if I really started learning that lesson until 2020, which I'm sure a lot of other people who are now in their early 30s or who are still in their late 20s can probably relate to. Of course, there is so much more to life than work, and there is so much more to you than any job or title that you have. Maybe if I had heard that back then, it would have made the blow of getting laid off from nylon sting a little less, because that job really was my identity. Like, that was really the only way that I saw myself, especially in the beginning when I just graduated from college. And clearly there was more to me than that, but because that was the thing that I valued the most and that I personally kept placing the most value in, when it was taken away, it was all the more painful, and I was left with feeling basically like I was just floating through the stratosphere with nothing to grab onto. And it would have been nice to not see that as such a harsh blow and to know that I had backups and savings and other options. Another huge piece of advice is don't believe everything you see on social media. And obviously, I know to take everything I see with a grain of salt, but I think what I really wanted to get at with this and what I would focus on telling my 20-year-old self would be, don't give in to the pressure you see to keep up with how other people are presenting on social media, and to think about all of the things that I share on social media, which I feel like I try to share as much of a realistic picture of things as I can. I feel like I share normal work from home days. I feel like I share fun things that I get to do just as much as sad things that happen. And I hope that I can portray like a somewhat aspirational, but also relatable balance. And I know that's not always easy to do. However, I know for a fact that there are plenty of people, especially in the industry that I work in, who are only showing the best of the best. And I think that, especially when that's the bulk of people who you follow on social media, I mean, back then it probably would have been mostly my family and friends who I was actively following, but now I follow, I think, almost 2,000 accounts on Instagram, and a good majority of those are, other content creators and people who I do like following. But I think I would just make sure to understand to really take things with a grain of salt and not feel pressure to go do things just because they're popular on Instagram. Like, clearly, I would have saved a lot of money on, I don't know, rainbow bagels or like those ridiculous loopy doopy drinks that were literally a glass of cheap champagne with an ice pop in them. If you remember the Prosecco pop craze from 2015, like, clearly that was a waste of $30, right? But how are you going to tell 22-year-old Austen that? Who's so eager to go and to take the photo and to post it on Instagram. And I think also now, too, as I look at a lot of people around me who have also maybe recently gotten married or who are considering purchasing their first home, or people who rent even, these like very luxury, beautiful apartments. I just don't ever want to get tricked into believing that just because something is on front of me on Instagram, that it means it's the right thing for me to personally do, or that I feel like I need to have certain things to keep up with a certain vibe or aesthetic. And again, I truly don't really feel that way at my core. I think that one thing that I need personally to feel financially secure and confident is to know that I'm living below my means. I mean, our rent has gone up over the years quite a bit, and we're definitely looking to reevaluate as our lease will come to an end again in the fall. But again, at the time, even moving to Hoboken, I was very stressed out about the status of what it would mean to not be in New York City proper. Like, mind you, I literally, if I went up a floor to my roof, I could see a clear as day skyline, like from Empire State Building all the way down to World Trade. of the city. And that is literally how close I am. But I was really worried about losing the New York City address, like the zip code, and what that all meant. And I feel like we can talk about this more in a future episode. There's especially been some interesting conversations lately about New York City influencers and how a lot of them, I obviously don't agree with this because I try to diversify my feed and follow as many different types of people as possible, but how some people's apartments all look the same and the girls all look the same and we're all doing the same things and going to the same events. And I do feel like, my apartment doesn't look like a lot of typical New York City influencer apartments, but that's also because I am not willing to rent an apartment that is above my comfort level when it comes to finances, just for the sake of having a particular backdrop or fitting in a certain way or keeping up in that sense. And this is really what I'm trying to get at when I say don't believe everything you see on social media. Like the people who do live in luxury apartments, like some of them can afford it very easily. And some of them are probably stressed every single month when they go to pay their rent. I am someone who believes that financial security and mental health are very intertwined. And for me, it has been such a weight off my mind to, make the trade off of no, I'm not in New York City. I'm in Hoboken and I do love Hoboken. Just because I don't have sweeping panoramic views of the city from my living space doesn't mean that I don't get to still benefit from being in the city and live somewhere that I love and that makes sense for me. I would definitely tell my younger self that because I think she would have a lot of strife and grief about leaving New York City. And again, could not possibly be closer if I tried. Like I could be in New York in 20 minutes if I called an Uber right now. But I do think that that kind of presentation and how it looked to other people and where I am is something that I would really fixate on. And I think I would save myself a lot of stress and also open myself up to a lot of good, exciting possibilities if I got over that exact presentation of it all sooner. Also, a lot of things in influencers' lives are gifted to them, which we are in a very lucky position to see that. But if you see an influencer who lives in a luxury building and gets sent on press trips and is carrying designer bags, maybe one of the reasons they can afford that particular living situation is because almost everything else in their life is comped for them or is in exchange for the coverage that you're seeing on your feed. And I do think it's our responsibility to curate a feed that is diverse and fun and exciting and a good balance of things that are aspirational and things that do feel realistic at the end of the day too. Okay, this might be the one that I think would be hardest for me to hear back in the day, which is that relationships aren't always going to be 50-50. And I mean this in both, like romantic relationships and life partnerships and also in friendships. I remember when Andrew and I first moved in together, I was extremely, 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 extremely intent on splitting everything evenly, like right down the middle, rent every month, expenses, going out to meals. Like if I bought this, you buy this back. We Venmo each other at the end of the month. And obviously I feel differently now that we're married and we kind of just like share everything. It's like, I paid for that, you pay for this, so I want to treat you for that. It all ultimately kind of comes from the same place. But one thing that came up when Andrew was training for his first marathon, I remember, was that he would get home from work and, he would be out running like for hours and hours. And I feel like back then we had a little bit more of a split where he would cook just as much as I would. And again, it was like, let's keep everything 50-50. Like I do it sometimes, you do it sometimes. It just started to make literally no sense that he would get home from work, he would go run for like 2 hours. So say it's like 7 or 7:30 by the time he's done. And now he's only just starting to cook dinner. So now we're not eating till 8. And I was eating lunch at like noon. So I was really hungry. And I was like, what are we going to do? And he was like, I have to run. I'm doing my training. Like, I don't know. What should we do? And like, clearly it just wasn't a very good system. And I kind of have naturally just taken over and done the cooking and also like the grocery shopping and the meal planning because I'm the one who has the time to do it. And because I plan out our meals and, I'll like ask if there's anything he wants, obviously, before I go to a grocery store and things like that. It just gives me more flexibility. I can go to Trader Joe's on a Monday morning when literally no one else is there and be done with shopping in like 25 minutes versus us both going just because we have to go, it has to be even, and wasting like over an hour of our Sunday doing that. I'm the one who usually cooks because when it gets to be about 30 minutes out from when I know he's coming back from his run, I will start cooking. So that by the time he gets back and stretches and showers, we can both sit on the couch, eat and relax and like enjoy each other's company now that we're both there. This is one example of many things that I feel like do just come up over the years, because sometimes one person is going through something that is way more deep or intense and you need to be there for that person, and then you would want it to be the other way around when you're going through something like that. But if you're not going through something and you're around to help, then who cares what the actual split is? And this goes for friendships so much as well. Like friendships really go through, I feel like, the ebbs and flows of who needs who when. Like there could be something really intense going on with a friend where you want to be around and available to pick up the phone whenever they call. But that doesn't mean that as soon as that thing's over, they have to check up on you as much the following week if you're not going through something like that. When I got married, Taylor, who was my maid of honor, was there to do so many planning calls with me, and she helped me like prep the flowers the night before my bridal shower. Like she really helped me in so many ways, even though I am a big planner and I basically planned my bridal shower in the sense that I was like, these are the colors I want. Here's what I want the menu to be. Here's where I want this to be. Like, here's how I want to do photos and things like that. It's not like she had to plan my shower to be a help to me. Whereas I am now her matron of honor for her wedding later this fall. And I'm the one in Canva making like a whole PDF of the ceremony because I saw the template on Canva anyways. And because I like to be organized and stuff like that. I am still helping her and reciprocating, even though we're doing like different tasks. She came with me to try on dresses. I couldn't make it to her dress try on this year, so she relied on sending me photos. Like, it's not always going to be 50-50, but you still both make the effort to show up for one another. And I think this is such a good lesson to learn for professional relationships, personal relationships. Like, there will be times that you feel like you're really there for someone, and who knows, like they might not need to show up for you in that same way for another like 10 or 15 years. And I think that's the beauty of a long lasting friendship, is being really understanding when things ebb and flow, and being the kind of friends who always still will reach out, send the text to check in, say we need to FaceTime soon, and just make the effort. Even if people can't get together every single time you reach out, when you do get together and it feels like no time has passed, like that is a friendship that is worth saving. Another huge piece of advice that I would share is your value is not tied to metrics or made up timelines. This one isn't always easy, especially if you, similar to me, work in social media, or you have a very analytics driven job, or maybe you're in school where obviously your grades matter and you want to do the best you can. But just because there's room to grow and improve or more for you to learn doesn't devalue you like as a human in any way if you're not hitting certain metrics and milestones, especially if you're not hitting certain metrics and milestones in the cadence or at the pacing that you thought you originally would. Let's think about this professionally for a minute. In a world now where it is a lot more democratized, like the type of job that you can have and how much you can make if you choose to kind of go at your own pace and operate outside of the function of just a typical corporate ladder that you climb. There are content creators who started posting videos 2 years ago who probably already have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I have 22,000, but that doesn't detract from all of the years that I've been learning and creating videos and connecting with people online for all these years. I would say this is also under the category of don't believe everything you see on social media, because there's a lot of content creation advice that I see, at least from people with huge accounts, where I don't mean to discredit the advice that they give, but sometimes, unless I've really like seen their journey over the years and seen the work they put in, sometimes it's like, yeah, it's easy for you to say. It's like, oh, take what your community is saying and use that for video ideas. It's like, bro, what if no one's commenting on your videos yet? Like, it's easy for you to say when you get 200 comments on every single thing you post, right? Actually, one quote that came up in the Colin and Samir interview with Jack Conti, which again, I will link in the show notes if you're interested, is this concept of you have to love shooting hoops in the park by yourself with no one watching. If you really love basketball, you also love the art of just practicing and being out there and trying over and over again to improve and see how much you can do and see how much better you can get. And I feel like that is a path that any artist can be on too, or anyone maybe even in a creative career, where it's like, I would not still be doing YouTube if I did not genuinely love documenting my life and making videos and sharing them with people. Because if it were just numbers that were driving me, then who knows what path that would lead to. That's why when I think very clearly about who I want to follow and how I curate my feed and what I take in from social media, again, oftentimes with a grain of salt, there is that little hint of like, don't take advice from someone whose job you wouldn't want. It just makes me mindful of who I choose to consume and how much of that advice I try to listen to. And I also believe that your value is not tied to hitting certain milestones within a certain timeline. I mean, I actually don't think I would have believed at age 20 that I would be like fully married and with my person by age 30. That is not really something I foresaw for myself back then. I'm extremely grateful that it all happened, but I think I would have been, I don't know, maybe disappointed isn't the right word, but I think I would have been really shook up to hear that I had gotten laid off and that my career path had kind of been toppled. And meanwhile, on the other side of that, I have like a personal life and a relationship and a partnership that's like thriving and that like really drives me and grounds me and is something I'm so lucky and grateful for. So just because my career path didn't turn out quite the way I thought it would, like, oh, by age 30, what do you mean I'm not like the senior fashion editor somewhere? It's like, look at everything you have on the other side. And maybe you feel the opposite of that right now. Maybe your career is like amazing and exactly where you want it. And you're on the dating apps. People are how they're going to be on dating apps. And it's just so hard to know. And like, that's the thing where all of these different timelines, we can only do what's meant for us and we can only control what's within our control. To go back to content creation for a moment, just because that's my instinct, because it's my job. And I do think that one of the hardest parts about being a content creator is to post consistently, like to keep going when it feels like no one's watching. And I feel like that's also the hardest part of dating, is to keep showing up when so many conversations in a row seem so monotonous or misogynistic, let's hope not, or maybe just boring, or like the vibes are off and you're just not clicking. It's hard to keep showing up on a dating app when things aren't necessarily looking up. But you could be one date away from meeting your person. You could be one video away from the whole trajectory of your career and your channel going. And that is something that I think is worth continuing on for, not just for the sake of metrics, but for the sake of showing yourself that you can continue to show up even when it's hard. That actually is, oh, I should have ended the episode with that. There's two more. I should have ended the episode with that, but truly that's something I think about all the time. Because again, I have so many friends who are thriving in one way and then get very fixated and frustrated with another area of their life that's maybe not perfect right now. Carrie Bradshaw on Sex and the City always says you're always looking for like a job, a boyfriend, or an apartment. So maybe you have your own trifecta of things in your life where you might have two out of the three and you're still going to be missing that one. And then maybe you get the one and then the other one disappears. And it's an always dance. I feel like adulthood is, of just trying to keep as many plates in the air at the same time. Is it as many plates in the air? No, I think I just mixed metaphors. I was picturing a plate spinner while I should have been picturing a juggler. So you want to keep as many balls in the air or plates spinning, I guess, as you can at a time. Okay, two more to round us off. One of them, time is your most valuable asset. And I really, really stand by this one, especially within this past like 5 years. You can always make more money. You can't make more time. So anything that you can do in this current finite amount of time that we are given, however long that is for each of us, whatever you can do to get time back, to find time to spend with people you love, with your family, to spend time doing things that truly bring you joy and make you happy and leave you feeling fulfilled, that is something that is very worth prioritizing, because we don't know how much time we get with each other, that we get here, like on this planet, here right now. You'll see how much time is left in the podcast episode because you're watching it in real time and you can see the time bar at the bottom. But that's one of the reasons why I feel like it is so worth it to get your groceries delivered if it means you get to spend another hour with your person at the end of the day when they come home after they ran however many miles training for a marathon. I should really take my own advice on that one, but grocery delivery, maybe it'll be in my future. We'll see. Even when I was working with Sean, my YouTube video editor, like outsourcing to him to get that time back in my day was such an incredible gift and something that I'm so happy and grateful I was able to do. Because even though for right now in my business, it makes more sense for me to personally edit my own videos, I can see all of the time that was spent from someone else editing. And now it's up to me to make sure that I can fit that into my schedule. And that if I take that back on, it means I might move this or I might have to drop that. And that's just the nature of time, is we're really only given so much of it. So anything you can do to set boundaries around your time, to protect your time, or to outsource things that maybe aren't really worth your time doing, quote unquote. I know we all love a Sunday reset, but like when you actually hire a cleaner to come and clean your house, truly just finding any and all ways to maximize your time and to try to get as much of it to be spent on things that make you happy or that help you work towards a goal and feel proud of something. I feel like there really is no price on that. And the last lesson that I would leave my 20-year-old self with is that it's never too late. And I really believe in this mantra of it's never too late. Like, you don't need to wait until next year or wait until the start of a new month or even wait until Monday to decide that you want to work towards something new or make a change or do something when you feel like you have had analysis paralysis for way too long. If you've been overthinking or if you're worried about being judged for something, like, literally, who cares? It is never too late to try, and to tie it back into time is our most valuable asset. If not now, then when? I just did a very quick Google search for examples of it's never too late. So just to quickly name a few, at age 23, Tina Fey was working at a YMCA. At age 30, Martha Stewart was a stockbroker. At age 27, Vincent van Gogh failed as a missionary and decided to go to art school. Vera Wang failed to make the Olympic figure skating team. She didn't get her editor-in-chief position at Vogue, and she designed her first dress at age 40. Morgan Freeman landed his first major role in a movie at age 52. None of this to say you have to wait long at all. It's all just to say that people realize it's never too late and that you can pivot and you can change. Especially in the world of content creation and social media, if anything, the last few years have shown us that there is so much opportunity, there's so much potential. Like, this industry will continue to grow. And would I be somewhere different if I had been posting YouTube more consistently since 2015? Yeah, maybe. But the point is that I'm doing it now and I love it, and that it's not too late for me. And that also means it's not too late for you. All right. Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Let me know if you ever want me to give advice about anything else. I know a few other podcasts where listeners write in and ask the host questions or gives them prompts and things to answer. So I'm super open to things like that, especially if it means that we can connect on a deeper level and make this conversation go more than just one way. I know I talk at you guys a lot, and I so appreciate you sitting around with me and listening at all. But if you ever want to talk back, you know where to find me. And thank you again for listening to today's episode. As a reminder, you can support Create and Consume for free by doing any of the following. You can leave us Apple and Spotify ratings and reviews. You can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you're watching this episode on YouTube. You could follow at Create and Consume Pod on Instagram and TikTok. You could send this episode to a friend who might enjoy it. And as always, don't forget to check out createandconsumepodcast.com for episode recaps and more. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.